There we go.
Amazing. All right. Well, AT, go ahead and take it away. We are excited for this with Welcome Home CEO, John.
Great. Well, thanks everyone. Hopefully you got to network a little bit, meet some other folks, and feel free to put stuff in the chat if people can be helpful. So for this, interview here with John, what we'll probably do is a little bit just on John's background. I think he's got an interesting background to become a founder. And then we'll jump into most of the time around Welcome Home Software and what they do and their journey. And then we'll close with some of John's thoughts on, healthcare and markets or anything like that. But feel free to put questions in the chat. And then the last 10 minutes or so, we'll call out some of those questions for John. So with that, we'll jump in. John, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate you joining us earlier.
Sure.
So we'll start, John, with some of your background. I think, interesting background of a lawyer from a top law school and then going into consulting. Maybe give a quick overview for some of the folks of your background of how you got the law degree and then in the military a little bit and then the Bain, how you got into consulting.
Yeah, I think interesting is your way of saying nonsensical, and I'm way too old to be an entrepreneur. So I grew up in a place called Youngstown, Ohio, and in Youngstown, Ohio, there's kind of three professions that you know about. You're either a priest, a doctor, or a lawyer, and didn't want to be a priest. I fainted at the sight of blood, and so I set off to be a lawyer because that was the noble profession that real adults did, and went to undergrad and then on to law school. In order to pay for law school, I did ROTC with the Air Force and spent 4 years at the Pentagon. And while I was there, which was an amazing experience working for the government, I'm not sure if many people say that, but it was. All of my friends were lawyers in private practice, and every single one of them was absolutely miserable. And so the nice thing is I knew I had a 4-year commitment, so I had years to figure out what I was going to do next, because it immediately was apparent that going into private practice wasn't the right thing. And I learned about this thing called management consulting through friends and friends of friends, and it seemed to have a lot of what appealed to me in law school and as a lawyer, which was problem solving. And so I had the good luck of finding my way to Atlanta from DC and to a place called Bain, where I met an amazing group of folks that seemed to be always replenishing itself. There's always a new crop, including a young person named H.E. Gimbel, who when I met him probably 20 years ago, looked exactly like he does today, which is really frustrating for those that are aging. And I went in part thinking that this was going to be 3 years in lieu of getting an MBA, and then I was going to go on and have my real career. And I always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. But when I was at Bain, I kind of loved it. I really enjoyed what I was doing and the people I was working with and the problem solving, and then life takes over and you suddenly have 5 kids, and so I continued to do that, but the itch to start something, to do something small or from the ground up was still there. And so after 20 years, I retired from Bain and went into Welcome Home full time.
Cool. Well, definitely an interesting background. I think, I want to jump in at the end to some of the things from consulting that were helpful to you as you started a business. But, as you started to have that itch, as you described, and say, I think I do want to go start something, tell us a little bit more about, why you picked something broadly in the healthcare space and what drew you to start exploring something in this space.
Yeah. The best way that I thought that I could be successful is find a place where there's a lot of problems and there's no great solutions. And I think that you look at healthcare at 10,000 feet and it screams that. It is the largest slice of the economy. It is incredibly complicated. There is leakage absolutely everywhere. So whether you're attacking to help at the cost or trying to help drive revenue, and whether that driving revenue is through pricing optimization or some form of sales performance, it's a target-rich environment to draw something from the Air Force. And so that's one thing that at 10,000 feet attracted me to the space. The second is, as a consultant, I was accustomed to enterprise level sales, and so I wanted to do a B2B business. And again, when you look at healthcare, you find slivers where there are plenty of enterprise like clients that with one decision can provide significant revenue to a startup to start to cover the costs. And then the third, and maybe this is just me, I like the people, right? I could look within healthcare and see individuals that I wanted to help. And there's a lot of industries that you can look at, and again, spending 20 years in management consulting, I've worked in a ton of them, where it's harder, quite honestly, to wake up every single day and say, all right, I want to help serve their mission. It's a lot easier for me personally, as well as when I'm recruiting folks and talking to folks, to say, all right, the mission of our clients is worthwhile, is noble, and us enabling that is a good thing. And yes, they're in a stressful environment, and occasionally they take the stress out on us. But at the end of the day, most folks that have gotten in healthcare did it for noble reasons. We're not serving hedge fund guys. No offense to any hedge fund guy out there. So, I mean, all of those things kind of conspired. But at the end of the day, I thought it was the easiest place to be successful.
Very cool. Like, lots of interesting things there that we'll dive into. Just finding a broad market, to your point, where, hey, there's lots of problems and no good solutions, and then sort of, starting to hone in. So maybe just for context, we haven't mentioned that. What's the, one sentence on what does Welcome Home software do, just for context, and we'll jump into Welcome Home in a minute.
Yeah, we're a sales and marketing software platform that serves the senior living industry. So that is the one sentence of what we are. So it is healthcare adjacent or healthcare light, but nonetheless, we have PHI and have to be HIPAA compliant, and the tensions that our operators have a significant clinical aspect to them.
Very cool. So now let's take that. So now you said, hey, looked at healthcare, a big space, saw some problems. How did you start coming up with the idea for Welcome Home software? We see a lot of entrepreneurs that talk about, like, I've got a space, but no idea, or I've got the specific idea, but then it takes a couple changes before it starts to. Tell us through how you thought through this specific idea.
And in some ways, I'm spoiled, right? Because I was doing management consulting, I was seeing a lot of different aspects of healthcare, right? I was working with payers, I was working in the pharma industry, I was working in on the provider side with physician practice management groups, and I was working in senior living, and so I had this landscape as to different elements of healthcare end markets and different problems that they were seeing. And again, maybe it's just a regimented way of going about things. I started a scorecard as to, okay, where did I think that there was going to be opportunities? And I won't bore you as to what the scorecard was. And I rapidly got to senior living. Like, across all of healthcare, I wanted to help senior living operators. And in particular, I wanted to help the sales and marketing team drive the top line. Again, it was a combination of, I saw the need, and I also thought that there was an area where I naturally could add something. So once I got to that, I just listened a lot. And I started Welcome Home while I was as a side hustle. I still have my day job. And so this was what I was doing with my free time. And I went on a listening tour. And I talked with well over 100 folks. And the approach that I took, or I tried to take, was being a sponge and not trying to necessarily push any particular product or have any answer already in my mind. It was asking them as to exactly what are their biggest pain points. When it came to technology, what did they love using versus hate using? And truth be told, I had an idea in my head, and it turned out to be just dead on wrong. And it was through those conversations that every time I would float my main idea or some other idea, they would come back and say, yeah, that's nice, but what I really need is a better CRM. What I really need is a better CRM. That sounds fine, but it would be a better feature for a CRM. How would that integrate into my CRM? And after the 900th time I've heard the word CRM, I came to the lightning bolt conclusion: maybe we should build a CRM.
Very cool. Wow, tons of interesting stuff to dive deeper in there, John. Before we miss it, I wanted to jump back to what you said about the scorecard, because I actually think that's a fascinating topic that we, as we start our own businesses out of our studio and in others, there's various flavors of scorecards. What were some of the key elements, and how do you weigh sort of, the problem pain versus the size of the opportunity versus your own unique skill set in that space versus your passion for that? Like, how did you weigh those in your head? I think that's an interesting topic.
Quite honestly, I probably weighted it more towards what did I think I could execute on rather than what is the opportunity itself. Mm-hmm. I mean, you sit and do, what is the overall end market size? When you go into the sub-markets, what are the sizes of those? What's the customer landscape look like? What's the competitive landscape look like? Mm-hmm. But for me personally, I got to, I didn't have aspirations to be a unicorn, right? So I just wanted to build a nice, sustainable business that I thought was adding value to my clients. And so I wasn't prioritizing on, let's just go with the biggest. Mm-hmm. I was prioritizing on market fragmentation, but of the operators, because I wanted to have enough folks to go after that if I landed 2 or 3, at a minimum, my co-founder and I could have a beachhead in the industry. And so I bias towards that. I bias towards, do I have a personal relationship or an in? Because in senior living, but I think in a lot of businesses, regardless of the technology, people are hiring people, and hiring a startup or buying something from a startup is a risk. And so I was looking as to, where did I feel like I had a decent personal network? And it wasn't, none of the personal network that I built at Bain is what led to any of our success. It was the network that I built in that listening tour mm-hmm. of a year. And it's okay, fine. Who there is going to be able to do it? And average contract size, and then finally, how broken was the competitive landscape? So those were the things that ultimately led me down this path. But again, there were bigger markets that I looked at that I thought that the competitive landscape was too daunting. Mm-hmm. There were bigger markets that I looked at that, quite honestly, contract sizes were beyond anything that I thought I could realistically achieve. There were other places where all the dynamics looked right, but I just couldn't figure out what my handhold was going to be in order to get those first few contracts. So that's
cool. No, it's interesting to hear how you think through that, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs go through that Well, let's dive in as well to what you said.
But I mean, my personal is it's very, and geez, I mean, I was a consultant, right? You do these kind of exercises all the time. It's very tempting to follow the money, but I don't think from a startup standpoint that can be your guiding light, because if you can't access the huge profit pools in an efficient way, you can burn a lot of money and a lot of effort and a lot of energy and a lot of patience, kind of whacking your way through the jungle.
Well, and I liked how you said also picking something that you believe you can uniquely execute on, because there's plenty of ideas and problems out there, but each person is not well positioned to solve all of those. But there are some that you are, and following that, I think is some good guidance. So let's jump into the listening tour, John. I think that's so important. So anybody's listening out here, that is, I think, probably the number one mistake that I see entrepreneurs make is they go around talking about their solution, trying to pitch something that nobody wants and not listening at all to the problem. Whereas John said, hey, I did it the right way. I just listened. I just asked them. I let them talk. And then when I start hearing the same thing over and over and over again, I know that there's something there.
Okay, you're being kind. So and I'm probably having a little bit of revisionist history. I was listening with an idea in mind. Then I tried to pitch my idea. Then they beat it back, and then I listened more openly.
But I do think it's an iteration like that, right? Is like, yeah. I always talk about when you start, it's 99% listening. And then as you start hearing things and start forming some ideas, then it becomes 90 to 80% listening. And then over time, eventually to the point where you're selling somebody, but like that comes much further down the line. I think one of the things I've found is if you're having the right conversations with folks about their problems, they tend to start leaning in. Yeah. They don't even know what you have, but they're like, man, if somebody could do something that does X, Y, Z, I'd buy that tomorrow. And you hear that, and then they're ready to join you. So tell me about, as you were having these conversations and the idea started forming more in your head, how did you know there was some of that authentic demand for it? And how did you start believing that, yeah, now that there's a problem and I've got this idea, but people really want this?
Yeah. I mean, most of them will have experiences in it. So where did I know the aha moment? And you've already hit on it, where they would draw on their prior experience and say, I used to work with a software that did this. I really miss that, right? And you'd ask, it's like, well, why did that, right? If that is something that you really liked, why did that go away? And they'd either have no answer, or it went away because the company was acquired and their product was sunsetted, and that was a core feature that for whatever reason didn't get carried over. Or you would talk about how, again, I worked in other environments and seen other sales tools, and you just sit there and it's like, yeah, I was working with a cruise line and they had their CRM was able to do that, and they're like, it could do that. That's amazing. And they had spent their entire life in senior living, or imagine most folks are talking with clients that have spent their entire life in healthcare, that they get very narrow and siloed. Mm-hmm. And you see their lights go up. It's like, oh my gosh. And then they'll start to ask questions or brainstorm. It's like, oh, if it does that, then it could do this, and then it could do that, couldn't it? Does it work that way? And you smile and nod and say yes, because it's like it will. But that is what ends up happening, where you start with a broad conversation, ask them about the tools that they worked in the past, or throw out what you've seen in other industries. Again, not saying that you're going to build it for them, and then they begin to lean in, literally, figuratively, and define their wish list without you having to say there, if you, what I found isn't worthwhile is starting with the, if you could build a perfect CRM, or if you could build a perfect sales tool, what would it have? people, when I was in law school, there was this saying about the tyranny of the blank page, right? You have to write something and there's the blank page. Occasionally you'll have one of those interviews that's brilliant and is going to essentially build the platform for you and they're with words, but more often than not, you have to prime the pump. You have to give them something to react to, you know, what you've seen in other places or what you've heard other people talk about. And even if you didn't hear anyone else talk about it, maybe it was just something that you're saying, you just cast it in the light and say, yeah, we've heard about things, people that would love to see this. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so tell me about that transition. So now people are leaning in, you're getting confident that there's a problem to be solved here, but CRM is a big word and people probably say, hey, there's 35 features I want in my CRM and you're the startup having to go build something. How do you prioritize what to start with versus what to fake on the back end versus tell us about when you went to start building, how simple did you do it and how did you prioritize what to do and how to communicate that?
What we prioritized, we wanted to sit there and say, all right, who do we want to help, right? And so with the CRM, there's multiple different audiences and users. You have the salesperson that's in the front lines, in the community on a day-to-day basis that's using it. You have marketing teams or marketing agencies that are interacting and pulling data from it. You have potentially the rest of the staff that is looking in and seeing, you know, when you have where the pipeline is and are you having folks in the community for a tour. You have the senior management, you have the executive, you have the regional management, you have the senior management. And where we started was, again, part of what we're hearing as to pain point across everyone is the people in the community weren't using it, right? And so if people in the community weren't using it, then the data that's flowing out of it isn't going to be helpful. And so from a software standpoint, we're like, all right, well, what is going to make the people use it? What is going to have those folks excited? What are going to be the wow moments when they see the software for the first time? What's going to keep them going back to it? And so those are the features that we prioritized as to, okay, fine. What is going to make that 50 or 60-year-old salesperson's day easier? What's going to give value back to that? And then as we progressed, we started to layer on the incremental features, which is quite honestly, again, counterintuitive and a little different than I would have probably started it from the beginning, where and I have a competitor, I have a few competitors, and what we heard was the reporting's fantastic, but no one likes to use it. I'm like, well, I can understand why you'd want the reporting to be fantastic, because the people that are making the buying decision on the CRM only really interact with the CRM via the reporting. And again, if the ball would have bounced a different way, I would have said, oh, fine, I'm going to build the features that are most important for the guys and the men and women that are making the buying decisions. I didn't do that. I went the absolute opposite way, in part because we heard, yeah, the reporting is great, but everyone hates using it. And I'm starting to doubt that the reports are right. I'm like, well, let's flip that on the head. And again, from a North Star or mission statement, we wanted the people in the community, the actual salespeople that the tool is designed to help, to say, yeah, I love this. And then after the fact, and if they're using it and it's helping them do their job and it's capturing the right data, then we'll figure out after the fact how to display the data, how to build the reports themselves.
Well, that's interesting, because I would say it's something that I think folks see a lot is, hey, the buyers want one thing and the users want another thing. And which way do you go with that to get going? Because trying to solve all of them at once is hard out of the gate for a startup. But I liked how I think what I heard you say was, yeah, everybody had good reporting, but nobody was focusing on the user experience.
Yeah.
And that was sort of your in to deliver something that was easily 10x better and then build out once you got that in.
Yeah.
So as you started getting some customers on, John, and you start scaling up, we hear product market fit is this big word that people talk about, all the time, of when you're starting to get some early sales process and early product and customers loving it. How did you think about that, and when you started feeling that, and what that meant for you to start, okay, there's something real here, we might need to start scaling this up?
Yeah. And part of it was scaling it up, and part of it was maybe it's time for me to retire and do this as real as a full-time job, because this thing needs a CEO. So we started, like so many, with pilot, right? We had 3 corporate clients, and they put us into 5 of their communities. And when I knew that this had fit, is that within months, all of the pilots had converted and we were being rolled out everywhere. And our clients were telling their peers about us, and we were getting inbound. I hired a head of marketing last month, which was 3 years and 2 months into after product launch.
Mm-hmm.
And he was employee number 34. And so I think this is true for a lot of healthcare, where they don't necessarily view each other as competitors. And so they're willing to talk. There's also a high degree of mobility within the industry. And so people will pick up and move, whether it's from one physician's office to the other, or to one hospital to another, one department to another, and the same thing. They move from one senior living operator to another, and they would drag us along. And even these, lowly sales directors who are 6 levels deep in a sales organization were enough of an advocate and could agitate and get them to change, get an entire corporation to switch its CRM. I'm like, yeah, we have something here, right? Everything is converting. We have promoters at every single level. The promoters at every single level are able to activate and create change. It's time to.
That's awesome. When you get those loyal, passionate customers, that's such a huge thing for you to believe it, and for your customers to be fighting the battles for you.
Right.
So as you started to see this happening, John, let's talk about fundraising, for a minute. You didn't raise money. There's a temptation that I have to go raise X million dollars to be a startup. Tell us about your decisions of, why you didn't go fundraise, or anything you thought through in that process as you started scaling up to, 30 something employees now.
I mean, the short answer, and what's in my autoresponder to everyone that sends me an email with the word capital or venture in it, is we have the ability to fund all of our growth aspirations ourselves. Thank you very much. We're not interested. And that's it, right? When I looked at the plan, and again, I don't want to be a unicorn. That is not my aspiration. When I sit with my co-founder as to what do we want Welcome Home to be? What do we want it to be next year? What do we want it to be 5 years from now? You ask yourself, we ask ourselves, okay, can existing cash flow or just the 2 of us with modest investment fulfill those aspirations? And the answer has consistently been yes. We can just do it alone. And so that's been the short answer. Again, every single person is going to be staring at a different set of opportunities and have a different aspiration. But for us, and as we kind of paint the vision for the next 5 years, we don't need outside fundraising. And And I talk with a lot of founder entrepreneurs and CEOs as to how do they spend their time. That's something that I'm always curious about. Am I spending my time the right way? And those that have outside fundraisers spend a lot of their time catering to their outside investors or thinking about what's next. And I prefer spending my time on my business and figuring out what to do with the product and how to drive sales and how to build a great organization. And any time spent with investors, even the best well-meaning ones who have their own agenda, is not what I want to do.
Well, awesome. I love that each business and each founder is different based on their aspirations.
And to your credit, when I talked to you about it, you were very upfront and said, given where you are, you probably don't want venture money, and I appreciate that.
But I think that again, that's an important thing for each founder to think through what's right for them and their business. And I think John's in a great position that, look, he's got full optionality. If somebody gave him an offer tomorrow, he can decide and take it and do whatever. Or if he wants to keep growing it to wherever, he's got full optionality to make it. So just know that for founders out there, you don't have to raise money to build a business.
The other thing that, and I'm sure that every single person on this line knows, and apologize, but if it's obvious, there is so much money out there that if we ever sought money, we'd be very deliberate as to what the money is, which is, okay, can the partner bring something that is multiples of the capital that they inject, right? Do they have a set of human beings that I can rely on either to unlock a market that I otherwise couldn't get into because they have relationships that they can do, or they have advisors, or they have some form of expertise, whether it's in marketing or in recruiting, and they are signing in blood that they are actually going to do what they say after the check is cashed. I mean, anyone can get any money, right? Can you get smart money, and does that smart money work for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, cool. I know we're coming up to the top there. I got one last question, and audience, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try and get to a few of those if we can. So last question, John. Hey, going through this journey now, over several years, what's one, from a lessons learned perspective, what's one thing that you guys got right that you would share as something to do? And what's one thing that you sort of made a mistake on that you would share to others to be wary of?
I mean, the thing that we got right is we pivot. We pivot a lot. Like we're okay making mistakes, and you just have to embrace it. You're not perfect. Nothing's perfect. The product's not perfect. The sales team's not perfect. The org's not perfect. Your implementations aren't going to be perfect, and you don't cast blame, and you don't beat yourself up, and you don't defend. You just roll with it, which is okay, fine. Like that was a learning opportunity. I went on a listening tour. I came up with an idea. I pushed a long time. It was not when after a couple of months of doing a round 2 of the listening tour, it was clearly not going to have market fit. It wasn't precious to me. I just let it go, right? And nothing is precious. When I hired my first employee, there was the 2 founders. I had my co-founder who is our CTO, and then I was doing everything else. I'd launched the pilots. I was the customer success person. I brought in the new customer success person. That was our first employee. I handed it to her and I said, I don't care if you burn all of this to the ground. And that's like, I'm hiring you to do this job because I believe that you're going to be a lot better at this job than I am at this job. And so go, right? And if you cut the bone or cut the muscle, I'll let you know, but run with it. And so we don't treat anything precious. we're fine with our mistakes and we roll with it. As to so I think that's what we did right. That's what we do right. I think it's part of who we are. From what we haven't, where I think we made a mistake, we were slow to build processes, right? I think that we really embraced and liked the scrappy startup, but we're pushing 40 employees with aspirations to get to 80 before too long, certainly to get to 50 to 60 by the end of 2023. And at some point, you have to let go of this being a small organization where everyone's just getting things done. Let me personalize it, and every time we have a new client come on board, we send them a welcome home gift basket, or just a gift, and it's a bunch of swag, but it's stuff that, and some things that they like. I would pack those things by myself and occasionally drag my kids into the office and would pack them. I liked it, right? I liked it. It felt tangible, right? And when you're founder and CEO and the company's growing, you don't have a tangible touch point to your clients as often. And certainly, again, the ones that we started the company to help are all these folks out in the community. And so I was, including last Christmas, or whatever that was, 2 months ago, I was building these boxes and carrying them and bringing them to the post office. It's ridiculous I was doing that, right? And you find that throughout the organization where, my VP of customer success occasionally is doing new user training, and we're just jumping from thing to thing. And so we should have built processes a lot sooner. Year of 2022 was the year of process. We probably got 10% of the way. So year of 2023 is it. And the more that you delay deciding these things that feel boring and feel corporate and feel almost antithetical to being a startup, the worse it gets. And so that was a mistake. We're fixing it. So.
Very cool. Well, John, thank you so much. Tons of great stuff there. Any plugs, John? Any positions you're hiring for, things you're looking at that you want to put out there for folks if they know anybody?
Yep. We're hiring virtually everywhere. As I mentioned, we just hired a head of marketing, so we need marketing talent. In particular, we need demand gen, digital demand gen. So that is a role that we have. We're onboarding clients every single day, and so we're looking for technical solution specialists and implementation support. So folks that are great with migrating data sets and thinking through integrations. And then we need a head of people ops because again, I'm wearing many hats, including head of HR, and I actually need someone to be the first HR hire. So.
Very cool. Well, lots of exciting stuff ahead. And John, thanks so much. Such great lessons on that. I love that listening tour, lingo, and just how you continually pivot and listen to solve problems. So thank you so much for spending the time here today. As we wrap up here, at the top of the hour, folks, we've got resources on our website for folks. If you go to landadventures.com/healthcare. You can view all of our past meetups. We list all the local healthcare companies in case you're looking for roles or other organizations to join, and then other content and stuff there as well. Some upcoming events. We've got our startup combos in February with some early stage founders presenting what they're working on. There's a life sciences healthcare talent night in February. And then our next one, date's not confirmed yet, but likely will be in March for this. But thanks everybody for joining, and thank you, John. Great stuff and stories. We posted a recap here in a few days.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, John.
Bye.